This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, show number 585. This is your spoiler-free place for Star Wars community and conversation. I'm your host, Dan Zare, thrilled to be talking Star Wars with each and every one of you. You can absolutely support Coffee with Kenobi by following the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok, and subscribing to the YouTube channel. Please help spread the word by tweeting that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. CWK is a proud member of the Spreaker Prime program. Thank you so much to the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. If you are interested in a no-cost, no-obligation quote for your next vacation, check out www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel and let them know Coffee with Kenobi and Dan Zare sent you. Thank you also to members of the CWK Alliance. Find out how you can join the Alliance for as little as $1 a month and get access to exclusive podcasts, videos, and much more at coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. On today's show, we finally get a chance to talk about the season 1 finale of Andor. I have brought along two of my friends who are co-hosts of the Hyperion Hub podcast, a great Disney podcast for fans who love all things Disney. I am joined today by John, Alois, and Shawn Degenhart as we break down and go into much more detail on not only the finale of Andor Season 1, but overall reactions to the first season in general. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi. Joining us today for a cup of coffee to talk about the final episode in Season 1 of Andor, I have one returning guest and one new guest to Coffee with Kenobi. However, both of them are very familiar to each of you listening, especially if you are a big Disney fan. I have two of the three hosts of the Hyperion Hub. First, let's bring a returning guest, easy for me to say, John Alois.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on the show again. Once again, Dan, we love listening to the show, and it's always great to be a part of it.
Well, thank you, bud. I am grateful this all worked out for our schedules. We are recording this on Thanksgiving Eve, but I want to get this show out a little bit early so people can listen to it, and then they can digest their turkey and watch all the fun festivities. Speaking of fun and festivities, our next guest is one of the other hosts of the Hyperion Hub. He is a longtime friend of mine as well, Mr. Shawn Degenhart. Shawn, welcome to Coffee with Kenobi.
I finally made it. This is exciting. This is what I'm thankful for this Thanksgiving. Thanks for having me.
Hey, buddy. I'm happy to have you. I'm currently teaching one of your youngsters, although she's not so young anymore. And then in the spring, I believe I have John, your son. So that's
Absolutely.
pretty good.
He's looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. And I can say that Clara is the only student I've ever had. I do different things to kind of gauge people's Star Wars fandom. And she brought up Admiral Yularen, and she knows the difference between Maul and Darth Maul and all kinds of other deep cuts. So that's some
Pondo.
very good parenting there. Yeah. She says Pondo Bob instead of that alien guy or the weird guy in the bar or whatever kids say.
Hey, may I just say, please, John Redling Schaefer, the third member of the Hyperion Hub, not the biggest Star Wars fan. However, when we do start getting him to watch everything we need him to watch, we have to have him on the show sometime.
Okay. That would be fun. I didn't mention John, our lovable but cantankerous fellow. He is not here, but we certainly love chatting with him. So, all right. So this is the 12th episode. I actually didn't know what it was called. It's called Rix Road. I didn't look at that because I was fortunate to see this thing a little bit earlier. So I watched it a couple of times, but this episode is called Rix Road. The culmination of quite a first season. So we'll start with you, Shawn, since you are first. Give me one word to describe this 12th episode and overall reactions to the episode.
You took my first word in your previous statement, and it was going to be culmination. I mean, everything has come to a head on so many different levels, and all of these story arcs just kind of end up in a mess like Christmas lights that were just thrown in the box at the end of last Christmas. You're trying to untangle everything. It was just fantastic.
Excellent. John, what about you?
So for the episode, I would say Shawn just used the word, actually. So we have kind of a theme going. Messy. It's a messy episode. It's not it's not messy as far as story structure or anything like that. But we learn more about each character and just how deep those characters are. So nothing cut and dry, really, for me. For the show, I have a different word for that. Can I share that?
We'll say that for the end.
Okay. All right.
We'll say that for the end. Excellent. All right. So the word I would use to describe this, and I literally have no idea, even now, I don't even know what's going to come out of my mouth as I say this, because this is an episode that is very much like the entire series, because it's not that it gives you more questions than answers. I don't feel like there's a ton of questions in Andor. I feel it's more like the pervasive feel of this episode of the season is more about how do these characters keep their chins up? How do these characters continue to drive and fight for what they believe in and try to find some peace of mind? So I guess my word would be unstable. And I mean that in the best way possible. From a storytelling perspective, yet again, this series continues to give us moments and characters that are just, frankly, and I mean this with all love of my heart, unlike anything we've ever truly seen in the Star Wars universe. Guys, we talked about this a lot throughout this first season, but when people say to you, because I have someone who's a really good friend of mine who's very ensconced in the world of Star Wars, works for Star Wars, and I'll just keep it at that to keep it nice and ambiguous. But this person is still having a very hard time getting into this series at all. And one of the things that keeps coming up is this Star Wars? Shawn, is this Star Wars?
Yes. It could be a story in any other genre. It could be a James Bond movie. It could be, 1970s action adventure spy movie. It could be anything, but there is enough Star Wars in there that you still have that feel when you see, the garrison of stormtroopers walking by. Little hints, even signage, languages, all those things. You're in the Star Wars world, but like you said, this isn't a major story arc like we saw with the Skywalker saga. That is big picture Star Wars. That's the upper crust of everybody in that world. Now we're delving much deeper, more personal. We're dealing with characters that, the Emperor would have nothing to do with on a regular day-to-day basis. This is that small spark of rebellion that we're seeing, which is more, I think, relatable to us as, everyday people.
I think so too. John, what about you? And do you watch it with your family?
I don't, unfortunately. My daughter likes the Skywalker saga. She doesn't really get into the outlying stories too much. And I don't know why. I think my son wants to watch it, but we just haven't had time to sit down and watch it. I would say it definitely is Star Wars because of all the same things Shawn is talking about. But you're right. I mean, I see a lot of influences from other films, other series, other TV shows, but told in this world of Star Wars. We're still seeing the pew pew, and we're still seeing, and hearing all the proper sound effects that we need to hear. But Andor in itself, the overall story could fall in any other genre. I agree.
Right. I mean, quite simply, and Dan slots to this, it is Star Wars because they're telling us it is. And I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it says Star Wars Andor. So regardless of what we've seen before, this is a new, very, very bold direction. I must confess, before it actually aired, I was lucky enough to see the first 3 episodes, and I wasn't sure how it was going to be received because I knew that it was much different, much more intense. And honestly, it sounds funny to say, but I think we all understand this. It's much more grounded in reality and realism. Realism is a certain type of literary creation that tries to make things feel grounded in a real world scenario. And this is, besides a couple of blasters and some space scenes, which there are really not that many of them, I mean, this entire series, there's no mention of the Force. I don't think we ever mentioned the word Jedi. Nothing with lightsabers. This could very well, as you said, Shawn, this could very well take place anywhere. It could take place, in New York City. It could take place throughout history, through many different world wars or different conflicts throughout the planet Earth itself. And I think that is what has been so amazing and refreshing to me. I always like, I've always found the criticism that The Force Awakens is a retelling of A New Hope. I've always found that to be honestly really a lazy, because yes, there are certain key things that happen, and there are certain things that may be reminiscent and very much homage, but they still have their own self-contained story. They still have their own things they're trying to do and they're trying to tell. It's still somewhat grounded in familiarity, and we know that if it wasn't, people would be confused about that. Nothing about this is familiar. And I think that's the genius that Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna and everyone who's working on this has created for us, because the constant uncertainty and the fact that we can't really get grounded in a world we think we're supposed to be familiar is exactly what the characters in the story, whether they fight for the rebellion or the Empire, that's what they feel too. And I think that ability to create empathy in a very unconventional world is the genius of the show.
Yeah, I agree. And getting back to what you said earlier about you didn't know exactly how you felt after the first few episodes. For me, I felt the same way, because I was told all along it's a very slow start. And so I kind of put off watching it. Just couldn't get myself into that mode. There's so many things to watch, by the way, right now. So I did start to watch it, and about maybe 4 weeks ago, and I caught up quickly, because after you get past that slow burn, I felt it was very consistent as far as action and proper storytelling. I mean, we were building a world here. So, and it's 12 episodes. I didn't consider any episode filler, but you still need to take your time in properly building to the crescendo.
Yeah, all that exposition was totally necessary. Just laid the groundwork for what was to come. And it wasn't painful by any means, but I'm glad they released those episodes together, so you kind of get a little more of a complete picture right from the start.
I want to let's look at each sort of major arc individually, because they all sort of, I won't say they wrap up, but they certainly all roads lead to Ferrix. Let's start with, however, there's one that doesn't, and that is Mon Mothma. We don't get much of Mon Mothma in this, but Genevieve O'Reilly, as I've been saying from the beginning, and many of you have, this is an Emmy-worthy performance with nuance, with subtlety. There's never any overacting. There's never any wailing or gnashing of teeth. It's a very reserved performance. She says so much with her face, with her expressions, with her tone, with her delivery. And right off the bat, we see the culmination of Davo and his family are there with this little boy who does not look to be a gangster at all. It just looks like a typical, well-to-do individual from a rich family. And then she comes up with her daughter. But before that, we see something else that happens that's critical to understanding the resolution of her arc in season 1. And that is an argument she has with her husband in the back of a cab. Now, I think there are a couple of ways. At first, when I watched it, I thought, oh gosh, maybe her husband is in on this. Maybe he's part of it too.
I thought that throughout the show. Actually,
I was wishing it, but then you realize really quickly that's not the case. That's not the case. I don't think he's not. It's not. She doesn't. I don't know whether she doesn't trust him clearly, or maybe she's just trying to protect him. The point is, Mon Mothma had to burn the bridges with her daughter and her husband, and there's more history with her husband, obviously, that we don't know about, but you can tell that it's there. She had to sell him out as far as publicly, because she knew very well that driver was listening into the entire conversation. She's no fool. And because she does that and accuses him of gambling, that's where the 400,000 credits appear to go. And the Empire is good with that. It's really genius. He's not an actor, so he doesn't know he's being sold out. But there's absolutely nothing satisfying. Yes, you want Mon Mothma to be safe, but we already know that because we know this story. There's nothing satisfying about what she has given up and what she has lost to try to make this galaxy free of the Imperial regime. And it's really heartbreaking. I found it really hard to watch, but compelling too.
Well, that she would, set up her husband to take the fall for that. I mean, he's no winner, he's no prize, but
No.
I'm sure she still, at some level, loves him. And for her to sacrifice him and their marriage in whatever state it may be, I think that says a lot for her drive and her single-mindedness to, help defeat the Empire. I like the Canto Bight mention. Little sequel trilogy throwback. And when she first got in the car and she was sitting there, you could tell she was stressed. We didn't know where she was coming from or what she had been doing. But when she opened up her collar, it was like she had released the shackles, from herself. And, she was finally able to be herself and had a little bit more freedom. But yeah, that scene when she's setting him up, that's tough.
It rips your heart out. And when she did that, I thought also that she feels so claustrophobic and she's about to have a panic attack. And I feel like even though she does that, it doesn't even give her any relief.
So let me just say that I didn't catch, I watched it twice and I didn't catch that the fact that she was portraying this character, in for the driver. I thought, he was so convincing that he wasn't gambling. I thought, is she becoming more paranoid? Because that's how we've seen her. That's how we saw her in the scene before the show began. The looking back at the previous shows, our episodes. Then on the second viewing, I saw that what she was actually doing and setting this all up. So what a complex character she is, and brilliantly portrayed through her actions, through her. She always looks like she's on the cusp of losing it, but she maintains her composure. That's tough to do.
Yes.
Well, and not having met her until Return of the Jedi, I was, fascinated by her at that point. And then you just start wondering this backstory to have that fleshed out is just amazing. And yeah, Genevieve O'Reilly was just stellar.
Isn't that cool? Because even, up until before Rogue One came out, I was like, oh, Mon Mothma. In essence, she was basically a trivia question to me. Because I knew that she was important, because in Return of the Jedi, they told us she was, but she's only in one little scene. And then in Rogue One, she shows up, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Kind of some neat connectivity. Then when she started becoming more of a presence in Rebels, still played by Genevieve O'Reilly, I was more like, okay, this is someone to watch here. Then when I knew that she was in Andor, and I saw this performance, now she's become like a legitimate fan favorite, and rightfully so.
You know what these shows are doing, though, Dan? They're opening up the world to I wouldn't call myself a casual Star Wars fan, but I stuck to the films.
Yeah.
And all the other fans were getting this rich history through books and through other media, video games and comics and things. And now we're starting to see just how incredible the entire world of Star Wars is through these shows that don't directly connect to Skywalker.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about Cassian. I was talking with someone the other day, and I said, the interesting thing about Andor to me is that I think you could argue that while Cassian is clearly the fulcrum in the point that connects everyone together, he is no more a main character than Mon Mothma or a lot of other characters in this story, right? Or the Imperial ISB agent Daedra, or even Cyril, although he's certainly more of a minor character because of screen time alone. But any one of these characters could make a claim that they're an important part. And the masterful thing about this is that we're glued to all of their stories. But we need to talk about Cassian because it is technically his show.
But why is it his show? Is it his show because it's the title?
No.
Because you make a great point.
Yeah.
That all these characters are equally important.
Well, I think it goes
Nothing
back
happens
to...
without him in season 1. Like he's the Ark of the Covenant.
There was an earlier episode, and it was talking about him kind of being... it was with Andy Serkis' character, Kenobi. Yeah. And it showed the fact that while Cassian is a leader, he's a quiet leader that wants to put everybody else first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he's done kind of throughout. He's willing to take that back seat and inspire others and move others, wanting to make them successful. And as long as the mission is accomplished, he doesn't care if he gets that glory and credit.
Right. And it's very different from Steve Rogers, who legitimately wants to push people forward. Cassian just like, I don't want, I mean, you hear the word, we don't, there is no time for this. We don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. You hear that. I don't know if you heard it in every single episode, but if you made it into a drinking game, you might be running into a problem. And I think that's clearly by design, because the whole thing is about time. How much time do we have? How much time is remaining? How much time until we're not safe anymore? It's always about, and time is a really anxiety inducing in and of itself too. So the casting we see here, he's come back. The reason that Ferrix is in the state that it is in is because everyone is hunting for him. Both Luthen and his team, and Cinda and Vel, and then of course the Empire is, and then Bix is protecting him, and that is why she is a shell, almost literally, of her former self. The Cassian here, guys, though, it fascinates me because he's definitely different. Again, the subtlety here, the character, I hope that aspiring writers watch this series to see how to truly develop a complex character. He doesn't oversell their emotions or feelings. Their changes are subtle, but they're strong. Cassian is not reckless anymore, even though he does things that are certainly not safe, but he's thinking of other people first, even though he's not flat out being warm and fuzzy about it. But he has purpose besides himself. In fact, the whole thing in the first episode was him looking for his sister. That went away. And I don't think that's because it was bad writing. I think it's because other things came to the forefront. In this case, the love of Marva, who clearly has had a massive impact. And we're going to talk a lot about her too. What do you think, guys? What do you think about Cassian?
I want to hear Shawn's thoughts. Let me just say this. You know, he reminded me of, from Rogue One, he reminded me of kind of the dashing hero, right? The Han Solo or the Poe Dameron. But he's so different from those characters. For him, in my opinion, it's all about survival. And then it gets to a certain point and it becomes all about taking down the Empire. Mm-hmm. And he has
no ego. He has zero ego.
Agreed. And there's that stair step that we have to go through. And that's why it's so great that this show is as long as it is. We finally see that switch, I think, flipped when he's in prison. And I don't remember the exact line, but let's take them down. You probably know it better than I do. But it's all about, if we're going to go down, let's take them as much as we can, or take as many as we can with us. Go down for a reason.
Right.
For a purpose.
I'd rather die fighting than give them what they want.
Thank you.
He had that drive all along, but it was a drive, I think, maybe for himself.
Yes.
And his own little circle. But then as his world expanded and went upside down, I think it got turned around so that he started being a little more maybe sympathetic to others. There was a line when his friend was delivering what Marva had told to say to him.
Beautiful.
That I think kind of set up the whole story. Let me see. He knows what he needs to know. He feels what he needs to feel. And when those two come together, he'll be an unstoppable force for good. And then she says, I love him more than anything he could ever do wrong. I think that's the moment that it turns for Cassian.
And that's Basso, by the way, I believe, who...
Brasso?
Brasso.
Yeah,
I love him.
I loved that speech too. It also showed me during that speech, we hear Marva say, or Brasso say, it was already burning. He's just the first part of the fire. And that to me said, or I took it as, he was the original inspiration. She's doing this all for her son. And that helped carry some of that burning desire and inspiration as well for him. That's how I took it.
I like that. Yeah, there's he again. It's so interesting how he's such an unconventional leader because he doesn't care about leading. He cares about taking down the Empire. But at this point, he's not willing to burn down everybody around him to do it. And I think that little thing he has, it almost looks like a Star Wars version of an MP3, for lack of a better term, some sort of communicator or recording device. The first time I watched it, I didn't remember that this is from Karis Nemec, the young man who inspired him before they took down, at the beginning, before they took down, what is the name of the place that they broke into the Imperial Vault?
Aldhani.
Aldhani, yes, the Aldhani thing, where at some point the ISP director says, this was about taking the taste of Aldhani out of the Emperor's mouth. That's what the whole thing was for. But he listens to the speech from Karis Nemec, and this is the speech. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks. It leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that. And know this. The day will come when all these skirmishes and battles, these moments of defiance, will have flooded the banks of the Empire's authority, and then there will be one too many. One single thing will break the siege. Remember this. Try. And it's the word try that was so captivating to me. In fact, I rewound that several times, and I turned on the captions to make sure that I was right. What is the last name? Because Cassian sees this. So it goes from being desperation and spitting in the Empire's food to trying to do something. And that's why at the end, when he goes on to Luthen's ship, and you see Luthen actually smile, a legitimate, it's even like a half smile, but it's actual sincere happiness, I believe. And Stellan Skarsgård is like insanely good. But, either kill me or take me in, basically. And when he said, and when you get the idea that he is not going to kill him, Cassian actually looks relieved. I've never seen Cassian Andor look relieved before, ever. So there's a connection these two have, and it's just so inspiring. It's clear to me that Henry Gilroy, who worked on this, and of course is most famous for things like Michael Clayton, for example. This is a guy who has a lot to say about oppression and tyranny. He's clearly very passionate. Is he the happiest person in Hollywood? I don't know, but he certainly is unabashedly has a direction and a point of view. But it's not agenda driven. It's more like, this is something I very much believe in, and I just really find it fascinating and admirable.
Yeah, that dialogue that you're referring to is so beautiful and so inspirational. Oppression is the mask of fear is what I zeroed in on. And the whole idea of Star Wars is fear versus hope, right? And trying to see the other through the other. And obviously the Empire is built on fear. That's how they train all of their soldiers. And we see the opposite on the other side. However, what I love about since Rogue One, since this idea was introduced, hope doesn't always mean you're going to do the right thing to get there, right? So there's a lot of little dirtier moments to build to the overall agenda, for lack of a better term. But what I loved about that speech, it was so well crafted, but then we get to the word try. And try in Star Wars lore, I heard Yoda, and that's a different type of
very
leader,
different. A very different type of try.
Exactly. But it was hard for me to unmarry the two, because try is such a strong word in the lore of Star Wars. There is no try. That felt like, okay, this whole world is starting over. They need to learn that they can they can get to where they need to go by taking your first step. But eventually you have to complete the journey. There is no more try to get there.
Right.
So it felt like starting from scratch.
Because Yoda's try is more like Luke, quit being so half-butted, for lack of to keep things family friendly. You got to give your all. And that's what it means here. Try. You've got to try. This is the Empire, this massive juggernaut, and we're tiny ants in its hands. But we can fight back.
What I zeroed in on Nimic's message, and I forgot Nimic was the character that had written the manifesto. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that brings it all together. But the fact that he said tyranny requires constant effort, it's kind of like telling a lie. You have to tell more lies to keep them up, and you're managing everything, trying to keep everything in your control. That, that's a weakness in and of itself. And authority is brittle. I think true authority comes from the people that you have authority over. Mm-hmm. And if they trust you, want to follow you, you're home free. But if you're imposing that authority, you're on really shaky ground and have to manage that even more so to keep it.
Well, speaking of shaky ground, let's talk about the funeral procession and what happens with Marva. At the beginning of this, you see someone who's constructing something, and pretty early on, you realize, well, they're building some sort of an explosive. In fact, it reminded me very much of something from like Goodfellas or even the movie with Sean Connery and Kevin Costner. They take down
The Untouchables.
It reminded me of The Untouchables a little bit too. Just sort of this slow, ominous burn that something is going to burn, and there's going to be an explosion. And this explosion is on multiple levels. It's very metaphorical, because Marva's speech, I don't have written down, but you want to talk about a powerhouse of energy and adrenaline. I mean, this is like Lou Holtz coaching against Florida State in the late 80s, early 90s for Notre Dame. This was, Airport. I'm not going to do all the Notre Dame coaches.
John's not a big sports guy. Just
oh, well, that's okay. There's somebody out there listening who might be. So that is just so. It was amazing. It was amazing. And what I love about the funeral is that it's very slow and very somber, and then it flips and becomes almost like a New Orleans funeral processional, or becomes very festive. But this one didn't feel festive so much as it was menacing. Like, it was a march with purpose, where almost like the spirit of Marva encapsulated all of them, and they're driving forward, and the Empire's like, hey, let's show a sign of force. And with all of their tanks and their stormtrooper armor and their flowing black cloaks, it didn't matter, because the purpose and the unity that everyone had, the daughters of Ferrix and the men who accompany them, you just knew something was happening. But the entire thing is so adrenaline filled, intense. Just like when Melchi and Cassian at the beginning of the last episode are hanging onto the side of that cliff, we as an audience are all hanging onto the side of that cliff, because it's about to go down, and boy, does it ever.
So
that funeral. Go ahead.
Can we back up 1 second? Something I didn't catch. Why did they speed things up? We were told they had a couple hours. We were told it was going to be later in the day, and then all of a sudden the bell rings and we're into the procession.
I think that was a way to just kind of catch the Empire off guard, because they had been in control. They had said, you're going to do it at this time. And now you saw the worry in their faces.
That makes
trying
sense.
to figure out what was going on.
It's like the shark swimming towards its prey. It's not going to slow. I mean, it is getting geared up and psyched up and ready. It becomes a march. It goes from a professional to a flat out march. That
slow, steady drone at the beginning, there was so much tension built into that. As musicians, when you're tense, things tend to speed up and get a little faster, but that was just so slow and steady. And I think having that diegetic music, which is music that the characters hear in the movie, versus underscoring, I think that brought us into the story much more. When you're hearing a big Williams-esque soundtrack, you're still aware that I'm watching this story. But when all you're hearing is the music that the characters are hearing, that brings it to a whole level of realism.
Tell me from a musician standpoint really quickly. Like, I don't know anything about notes. I don't know anything about tone. I don't know anything about pitch, except for if Sandy Koufax is on the mound or something like that. So tell me what the music is doing, what Nicholas Pertella is doing here that makes us feel that tension.
I think part of it is that it's not, it's that group of citizens that are playing. It's not a professional orchestra. It's not the London Symphony. It's real people playing music. Though? I don't think it does. It has an element of amateurishness
That's good to know.
That lends itself to the quality of homegrown. We're doing this, we're pulling together, we're coming together. But then when that funeral procession picks up, I mean, it's just ramping up the tension again.
So
it brings you into the scene.
Yes.
Can I please say the term one more time, Shawn?
Diegetic?
Diegetic.
Thank you. So Francis Ford Coppola does this brilliantly in Godfather Part 2. And we see Vito sneaking around the city, and we see the procession as it's going down the middle of the city, and we're hearing that very amateurish music. There's some beats in there, some shots that look like they're completely from that film. And Tony Gilroy, I would love to hear how he was inspired, because I've seen it done a few times. You also brought up James Bond earlier, the opening scene from Live and Let Die in New Orleans, that slow music that precedes the funeral. So it's a wonderful callback to brilliant storytelling visually, and if it works well, use it. And I think he used a lot of different genres throughout, and this reminded me of Godfather Part 2.
Yes, or even a little bit of Wakanda Forever, even though that's not possible because they were being filmed. Let's take a quick break, and we will return and talk more about the season 1 finale of Andor. I'm Dan Zayer, and this is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
I like the idea of, and I appreciate the breakdown of the musical quality, because when I was watching the second time, I'm thinking, I wonder how this sounds to people who know music. Because to me, it just sounds like not a joke band, but just a homegrown. I kind of like the idea of them making their own instruments, but the passion that is fueling these things is also fueling the anger. And then Marva gives her speech. At the end, she says to fight these, what's. And then they just becomes this like roar, and you get so charged up. And like when I'm watching this, I mean, I'm not feeling like I did when I watched Creed for the first time or anything, but I was very much like, here we go. Let's go. Let's do this.
I cheered out loud.
Yes.
I openly cheered at that moment. Oh, it's so brilliant. The way she describes the peaceful history, from a peaceful history to the spark of the rebellion on Ferrix, the music swelling, the close-up looks on the faces, the inspired words. By the way, some of the greatest dialogue, in my opinion, ever written for Star Wars. We get two great speeches in this episode with her face half covered when the Empire trooper comes over and throws the cloak over it. It's still visible, though. Her voice, loud and true, shouts out, "Fight the Empire." And yes, I did openly cheer, as I said. Sorry, Shawn.
That was a great line with the dead lifted me with their truth. So she has grown up being inspired by all those that have gone on before her. It was definitely a call to arms. She said there's a wound at the center of the galaxy that won't heal. It's not going to fix itself. Reaching like rust, and we just let it grow. We've got a little rust on the side of our van, and I'm constantly being asked, when are you going to see about that? When are you going to see about that? Well, it's not that bad. And then I think it ended with, the Empire is a disease that thrives in the darkness.
I love that.
It's never more alive than when we sleep. So she's no longer blaming the Empire. They're going to do what they're going to do, but she's really casting it on them, her people, saying, you've got to wake up and take care of this now.
Taking action. Go ahead.
Can I just say that her funerary stone, I could see it outside of Magic Kingdom as a little, the people that, donate to the.
Better start selling them at Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
Oh, that's him. Maybe I'll start saving my money. That's the whole thing. I very much believe like the one of the best ways for bad things happen is for people to do nothing. And she's saying, as you mentioned, Shawn, we are going to take action. It's a disease. It's not going to go away. We have to fight it. We have to try. We can't just lay down and let them do this to us. And it's such a wonderful metaphor for the reality of life. Anxiety, as we've said many times, is about trying to control things that you can't. and then being overwhelmed by things that you can't do anything about. Here is become, we're not making any excuses. We're going to fight for our people. We're going to fight for our home. We're going to fight for this galaxy. And the rallying cry behind that, you see real fear. I mean, real fear. And nowhere is that more obvious than when the ISB agent, Daedra, suddenly it looks like she's going to be part of a lynch mob. And she's about to be torn apart. And Cyril rushes in, grabs her, holds a blaster to her back to help get her away. And she doesn't know. And she is so scared. Like, the acting in that is just great too. The two of them have this scene. They've obviously built this weird, extraordinarily awkward, romantic, pseudo-romantic tension between
infatuation.
them. Yes. And I'm glad, because they both kind of represent the ideals of what they believe in. And I'm glad there was no kiss or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I very much respected the reality that this felt like a real scene. Like this, again, this felt like something from like the Boston Massacre, or just some sort of a very powerful moment in history.
So I had a couple of surprising moments from this battle. The first one, are you surprised? I mean, I looking back, I'm glad they didn't do this, because it was a way I didn't see coming. But are you a little bit surprised that we never saw Cassian fight? He was never in that battle in the street. I thought for sure we would see that at some point. That seemed obvious. I'm glad they didn't. First off, I want to get your thoughts on that, and then I have a different point.
Yeah, I think he's fighting by not fighting. I think if he did fight, if he even threw a punch, I think it would be take away from what they were trying to accomplish.
We did see him take out a trooper, or
he shoots someone at point blank range and flips somebody over. You know, that's just that was only though to rescue Bix.
Right.
That was the only reason for that. And he's already shown that he has no problem taking a life, and it doesn't even phase him anymore because he is a soldier. But yeah, the fact that I think a part of the point is that you don't need a big hero to fight. Everybody can be a hero. Everybody can be heroic and can work together. I'm so glad that he didn't fight, because it would have felt like it would have become about action. And that might be what crossed some people throughout. But this is not really an action series. Besides the Aldhani episode where they actually go into battle, this really hasn't been about action so much as it has been about character. And that's something I really appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Shawn, you want to weigh in on that?
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, John. You got a second.
Well, the other thing that caught me off guard a little bit was the stormtroopers have great aim all of a sudden. Now I have a theory. I mean, you can say that they were closer to their targets, so proximity. You can make a case that as the Empire grows, they take anyone and everyone, and that includes less qualified soldiers or people, and maybe the training has kind of slipped a little bit. Or probably more realistically, it's because this is a darker show, a darker tone show, and these stormtroopers are scary. I mean, they were hitting their targets, and we're not used to seeing that all the time in Star Wars.
I did cross my mind, but I mean, they literally have a high ground, even though this has become kind of comical. It's still factual. They all have weapons and they're trained soldiers. None of these people are soldiers. They have no blasters. They have no real distance weapons. They're just being mowed down like animals. Mm-hmm. If anything, it shows the cowardice of the Empire. It's very easy to open fire at somebody who's not trying to get into cover. You know, anybody could do that. So yeah, I felt like that had to happen, which made it even more satisfying when the stormtrooper climbs that bell tower and gets kicked out by the gentleman who's creating that tension on the tone there. That was pretty cool stuff.
I think the Cyril and Daedra scene, that was the most uncomfortable of the whole episode for me. Those 5 seconds of them looking at each other, I'm like, please, just let's next scene, please. That was just awkward. I really liked Cyril at the beginning. He became a little needy and clingy for me as the series went on, but I really liked Daedra, her drive, and with her work with Partagaz. I'm really enjoying that.
She was very empathetic until she tortured Bix, and then she became an Imperial slug.
Yeah.
But there's still that part of you that understands that there is a human being there who has her own purpose. You know, again, the Empire doesn't think that they're evil, but it's hard for me to believe when you torture someone and take away part of their mind, which was what they did to Bix. I was so relieved that she was rescued. I thought it was very true to form that she was scared to leave when Cassian was there because she was afraid they would be grumpy. That was her term. Because they reduced her, this strong and powerful individual became like a frightened little kid who was been tortured and abused. And the fact that they liberated her was so, that was like the only sigh of relief besides everybody getting away at the end.
I think as far as, you're talking about the Empire not thinking they're bad. I think anybody with any sort of drive and not much moral clout can justify anything.
Yes.
So she may not feel like she's doing something bad. She's working for the Empire, the greater good. She'll let them worry about, the moral standards of, what they want to do and what they don't want to do. But she's just fulfilling her job, trying to advance in her ranks.
Absolutely. Well, gosh, what other things do we know? Brazos, it was cool to see him finally get in the battle because he's such a big man. That actor is such a big guy. And to see him finally unleash and take care of business was really cathartic and rewarding. I feel like we've hit the major points. I thought it was important that Cassian, of course, didn't stay. At first, I was disappointed, but the way he leaves B2, and B2 says, you always say that, and the way Cassian and he break, you get the sense that everybody understands this is not the same Cassian Andor who's been pulling a bunch of side hustles and a lot of nonsense and putting other people behind so that he can, whatever his secret agenda is, he's not being secretive anymore. He's trying to help people. And it's just, he's so unselfish in his dark ways. And I can't remember too many characters that are like him. Still, he's still not my favorite Star Wars character, but his world and his universe and what he's bringing to the table is what I appreciate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think B2 is the only friend that Cassian has. I mean, true blue, honest friend that he's going to rely on and that can rely on him.
Well, Brazos is.
Yeah. But B2, I think, has been around a lot longer.
True.
The post-credit scene. Can we talk about that?
Let's talk. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I want to hear how you guys watched it. Like, tell me, I mean, for me, like I was so caught up in it and I'm listening to the music and I'm just thinking, wow, this was just like, I have goosebumps now. This was what a perfect ending to this really unconventional season. And I just was so satisfying, but that little window wasn't popping up and I was aware of it, but I was more aware of just kind of decompressing and processing what I just seen. And I kept thinking, boy, wouldn't it be cool if, and then you get this sequence of the Death Star being built. You hear the TIE fighter roars, and then what they were building, I don't know if that was related to what they were doing in Aldhani 5 in the prison. If those
it was. Well, it
looks like it to me.
Yeah, I've seen some clips where it shows them back to back, and it looks like those same pieces.
That makes sense to me, which is why they were so. But hats off to there's a connective tissue to Rogue One, and I almost wish I didn't see it because it takes away a little bit of realism when you've got a moon that can destroy a planet. But I also love it as a Star Wars fan. It's probably the most Star Warsy thing of the entire first season, and it's only for 5 seconds.
Well, first off, it's no moon. It's a space station.
I was setting you up for that. You're welcome.
Thanks. So you come in on, those pieces look industrial, heavy duty that they were building in the prison. And so, the guess was something for the Death Star, but then to see it in close, see the droids kind of assembling it, pull back a little bit further, and then you realize what it is. And then the way the logo, the Andor show logo at the beginning basically mirrored the Death Star over the planet where it was being built. That was incredible.
Yes.
So we started the episode with the bomb being built by hand, and those nice tight close-up shots. And then we end the episode, started with a human, end with that mechanical, those droids building on tight shots, and we pull back and we see the big reveal at the end. I like the callback to the start of the episode. The reveal as the camera's pulling out and we start seeing different pieces of what it will eventually become, the giant gun, the giant laser, I didn't know what it was at first. And I thought, are they introducing something that we'll never see again? Where are they going with this? And then, of course, we see the big reveal, which was brilliant. Everything about that moment tied everything together, reminded us once again, yes, you're watching Star Wars. You know where this goes. The good guys win. Hope springs eternal, right? And I cannot wait for the next season. Now, we don't ever have to go back to the Death Star again. I thought the nice link was that the prisoners were building, as slaves, were building pieces for what will eventually help take over the galaxy, or try to anyway.
Right.
So we don't ever have to go there again. It was just a nice moment to tie everything together for Star Wars.
Isn't it kind of wonderful that the Emperor's long game with building the Death Star and how long it takes? It's really not around that long. It's like, a couple hours and boom, it's gone. But that's got to get into the Emperor's crawl. But I mean, I don't know how much time-wise. And once the timeline book from DK comes out next year, we'll find out maybe a little bit more about that. But really compelling stuff. Well, guys, I don't even know that we scratched the surface of this episode, but are there any last-minute things you want to talk about as we wrap up?
I'm still wondering about Cassian's sister. I thought maybe there might be some thread pulled through at the end, but there wasn't. So maybe that's a season 2 holdout. And then I want more Mon Mothma. There was almost a look of guilt and hope as her daughter was meeting Tavo's son. There was a little side look that she was giving. It was almost off screen, that it was just, I'm doing this for a reason. She had to keep reminding herself. Those are my 2 takeaways: Cassian's sister and more Mon Mothma.
The word I was going to say at the beginning of this episode was gray. This whole show reminds us how gray Star Wars can be. It's not black and white all the time. We don't always know who the good guys are. The good guys don't always do the best things, right? But it's all laddering up to an overall mission. And I thought Andor did a spectacular job reminding us that we don't have all the answers of where they're going with Star Wars. And that's great. That's what makes it so exciting to watch and continue to watch. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say, the last 2 shows, Andor and Kenobi, we're seeing the darkest sides of the dark side, which is definitely in power, but it's filled with fear. And again, just a great way to tie everything together.
And that's why I think there was still challenge. Again, Mason hasn't seen the series because this really, even though there's some hopeful moments and some inspiring moments, it's still not a show. It's really not a show about hope, not the way that I think of hope, because there's no rainbow. I mean, you don't have to have an optimistic, unrealistic rainbow, but
I guess it's filled.
There's optimism as far as that they are free. They have something they're fighting for. They're united in their cause, and that is hopeful. But you haven't seen the Empire take even a splinter as far as they are aware of. So, season 2 is going to be spectacular because we already know it's going to start out 4 years before, and it's just going to be key moments from years 4 all the way to the very beginning of Rogue One. And Tony Gilroy said at Star Wars Celebration earlier this year that, when Andor season 2 ends, it's going to lead immediately into Rogue One, which leads immediately into A New Hope, which is pretty cool. So again, I like the unconventional quality of that. Even when things are good, they're still not great. And that's a very cynical view of how I think the real world works. But I also think it's an essential one because it sparks conversations like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when I say it's filled with hope, that we don't even get that until we get to the best speeches in episode 12. We know that it is because of what you said. That yellow brick road leads to a New Hope, the film. So because we know the future history,
yep,
we know where they're going. That's why it's enjoyable.
And isn't it interesting, too, that I still think it's weird to think of Andor as the same mythological universe where Luke Skywalker exists? Because Luke feels very cartoony now. And I don't mean that as a negative. Obviously, I've built the majority of my life around Luke Skywalker. I mean, literally. But it's just, it's interesting. I want to see how this ages. I want to see how it hits us overall. But let's give letter grades. We can do both. We can do letter grades for the episode and for the season overall. Shawn, go ahead and start.
I'll do a strong A for the show, the episode, and an A+ for the series. When it was first announced, mildly interested. I'll watch it, but from the third episode, I was gripped, and I looked forward to the next episode of it more than I did Obi-Wan or any of the other previous series.
Well, I can't wait till Clara catches up because I want to see what she thinks. She's a smart one. Yeah.
I'm going to go the exact opposite of Shawn. I'm going to say an A for the series, an A+ for the episode. I thought the episode was wonderful, just start to finish. The series had that slow start for me. And when I go back and rewatch it, and if I watch it, I know my son will watch it eventually. Mm-hmm. If I go back and rewatch it with him, knowing where we're going, I wonder if it'll hold my attention a little bit more. Because there were some moments there where I was like, where is this heading early on? But eventually we got there. And so it went from a B to an A for me after episode 3.
I think this episode is an A+, easily. It'd be silly for it not to be an A+. But the surgical precision with which they've told this entire story, just from a person who loves stories, it's an A+, 100 out of 100 times. But for me as a Star Wars fan, I'm going to give it an A because I'm taking my Star Wars rubric as a very different scale. To me, an A+ in Star Wars is the best of Star Wars Rebels. It's The Last Jedi. It's The Empire Strikes Back. It's the 1977 Star Wars. This does not give me those same kind of feelings and aspirational moments. Although it isn't inspirational, it does give me fascinating things to think about. And truly some of the most compelling characters we've ever seen in any Star Wars story, period, bar none. Again, not as an insult to other Star Wars stories, but just because we're talking about an intellectuality and a gravitas that is on a very superior level to a lot of pop culture out there. And that in and of itself is enough to recommend this thing easily, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, speaking of recommending, one of my absolute favorite Disney podcasts is the Hyperion Hub. And look, there are a lot of great Disney podcasts out there, but if you want 3 friends who love their Disney, who know their Disney, who've got some great connections, and they just bring the fun each and every week. Look, I love when you 3 interview people, but my very favorite moments when it's just the 3 of you riffing and talking and sharing our passions. And I love the Hyperion Hub, and I hope that everyone listening will subscribe and follow along for the great ride.
Thanks.
Well, we appreciate those kind words.
Yeah.
Some of our funnier moments we actually edit out of the show, unfortunately. but we give each other the business sometimes, but we enjoy what we're doing, and it's just a great moment of the week to get together and meet up at the Hyperion Hub.
Because you guys actually get together in the same house and record together, right? Typically?
Most of the time, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
We try to.
I love it.
Yeah.
We all live within about a mile of each other, so.
Oh, I don't think I realized that. Well, let everybody know where they can find both of you individually and where they can find the Hyperion Hub.
You can find me. I'm on Facebook, a little bit on Instagram. You can also look my concert ministry, Gospel Fest Ministries. You can look that up on Facebook, and the Disney Music blog on Facebook as well. Post some fun Disney stuff there. And then, of course, the Hyperion Hub. John, you've got all that contact information.
Yeah, you can email us at podcast@thehyperionhub.com. You can follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter at Hub Hyperion. I'm also on Twitter away from the Hyperion Hub, and I'm checking my handle at Voice with Alois. So you can check me out there. And we're all on social media, various places.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
that is going to do it for this week's episode of Coffee with Kenobi. It's been a while since I've recorded an intro or an outro. I just get so excited to record these reviews of Andor. Now that we're done with season 1, I guess you are stuck with me at the beginning and end of these little podcasts, and that is great because I get to chat with you and add a bit more of a personal touch to things, which is really important. And speaking of a personal touch, how about that for a transition? If you are getting ready to go on vacation or are considering joining me on the Galactic Star Cruiser, my suggestion to you is to go to the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi, which is MEI and Mouse Fan Travel at coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefan-travel. It is your place to go for a no-cost, no-obligation quote. They can help you plan your magical vacation to not only the Galactic Star Cruiser, which again, I'm taking a group of listeners to June 12th to the 14th of 2023. It's going to be a great time. But not only that, you can also use MEI and Mouse Fan Travel to go on the Galactic Star Cruiser, yes, but Galaxy's Edge, the theme parks, the cruise lines, Star Celebration, or anywhere else. It doesn't have to be anything related to Disney even. They can help you get that process started. I've used them to go to New York, to London, and to a lot of other places, non-Disney related, and I always feel more secure with MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. If you use them and mention my name in Coffee with Kenobi, not only will you have a great vacation, but you can support me and Coffee with Kenobi in the process. CWK Live is every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time at coffeewithkenobi.com/live or facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. This week we're going to give your top 5 things that you love, or top 5 moments for you from the season 1 finale of Andor. It's a great way for you to get your voice heard and your thoughts shared immediately throughout the podcast Galactic Airwaves. How about that? The Coffee with Kenobi Facebook group is the CWK Cafe at coffeewithkenobi.com/community for Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler and drama-free place. Coffee with Kenobi is possible because of all of you who helped to sponsor Coffee with Kenobi if you are a member of the CWK Alliance. Thanks to you, the podcast, Facebook Live, event coverage, and so much more can come to life, and do come to life, May of 2013. Find out how you can help the show for as little as $1 a month by joining the CWK Alliance. You will receive access to CWK Pour-Over, an exclusive weekly audio and video podcast not heard anywhere else. Members at the CWK Alliance All-Star level receive a video edition of CWK Pour-Over and access to a private Facebook group as well. Plus, CWK Alliance CWK Alliance Grand Masters join me for a monthly live video call, and that is at coffeewithkenobi.com/support or coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. This week, we have parts 1 and parts 2 of our Black Panther Wakanda Forever review. It was great fun to talk about, and I look forward to seeing what you think about it as well. Plus, 10% of your monthly contributions to the CWK Alliance go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital, and I'm the most proud about that. The website is coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and so much more. You can absolutely email me, danz at coffeewithkenobi.com. Connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR, on my Instagram, which is danzerCWK, and on LinkedIn. Coffee with Kenobi is on social media. On Twitter, you can also be a super follower there. You can also find Coffee with Kenobi on Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. You can certainly give the show a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. And you can also subscribe to Coffee with Kenobi's YouTube channel. Please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. If you'd like to get a sweatshirt, hoodie, or a tee with the Coffee with Kenobi logo, go to coffeewithkenobi.com/shop. If you want to start a podcast or a blog or have one in existence and want to expand your brand, please go to danzymedia.com and sign up for an appointment with me. I'm also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. And I hope you have the very best Thanksgiving that you possibly can. I am so thankful for all of you and for being such an important, powerful, positive influence on the Star Wars community. None of this happens without all of you, and I am grateful that I've gotten to know so many of you because of this little podcast here. So enjoy your Thanksgiving. Have some turkey. Have some mashed potatoes. Of course, have some pumpkin pie and coffee. And I will see you next week for much more Coffee with Kenobi. Again, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm Dan Zer, and this is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.